Hello, hello. Good to see you all. Let me pull this up really fast. Um, Welcome. If you want to come off and show me faces, that would be awesome. But I'm also happy to chat about anything without cameras. But it is always better. So if you can turn your camera on, that'd be awesome. We'll get started in just a second. If you maybe while we're waiting, if you want to drop in the chat where you're dialing in from, that'd be awesome. We got a good turnout already. It's great. And if you don't mind muting, that'd be awesome. We will hold on one sec. Yeah, nice. We got folks from all over the place. Charlottesville, Indiana, Texas, California. It's great. Nice. Well, it's good to have you all. We're gonna get started. And if you don't mind, can everyone just check to mute, please? That'd be awesome. We got a big crew here, so that'd be great. I can also try to mute everyone as well. But if you I know a bunch of you have already entered or already signed up for the boot camp. Um, it's starting next week. It's going to be awesome. So make sure you enter this. I'm going to give away a free slot in the boot camp today. So just around today, and we'll announce the winner. But even if you don't win the giveaway, this will give you a code for $500 off. So definitely take advantage of that. I can also drop the link in the chat. It's just that Bitly though. And yeah, we can get started. Okay, I just dropped it in the chat. And it's great to have people from all over the place. Got a lot in New York, which is great. Got Ireland, might be the furthest away that I've seen. Boston, great. Yeah, and if you don't mind turning your cameras on, it'd be awesome. It's nice to see some faces. Always better, but no worries if you're on the go. Okay, let's jump in. Welcome to Product Recruiting AMA. I'll go through just a quick intro, but I really want this to be helpful to you. So I have, some things we can talk about, but I'd love to just get your questions answered so we can take this in a bunch of different directions. I know there's a lot of you, so we'll try to field questions maybe through the chat or through if you want to raise your hand if you have questions, we can kind of like form a little queue here. So my name is John. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Leland. But prior to building Leland, I had a bunch of product experience. So I actually interned at Uber and then worked as a product manager at LinkedIn, was in their APM program, and then led one of their growth product management teams for one of their businesses, and then joined a startup called Curated, which is backed by Greylock, and Forerunner actually just announced their merger with another company, but it's kind of Series A through Series C that I was there. And then got my MBA at Stanford. So happy to talk about PM to MBA track and then building a company now. So obviously tons of learnings from my time as a product manager now funneled into building a company. So I'm happy to talk about that. I'm happy to talk about APM recruiting. I'm happy to talk about PM pivoting. Happy to talk about interviews, resumes, wherever you guys want to go. And I can kind of yeah, we already said where you're dialing in from. If you want to drop in the chat where you're working or studying, that'd be awesome. It's nice to just kind of see where everyone's at. If you're a student or if you're kind of a career pivoter later in your career, that's awesome to hear too. So and again, I'm gonna let you guys drive this AMA as much as possible because I want to make sure that it's helpful. We obviously have a bunch of events where we come with a bunch of content. The boot camp, and we'll talk about the boot camp just a little bit here in a sec, but that's where we basically recruited all the best coaches in different topics, and they're coming with a bunch of material, pre-work, post-work, interactive exercises, etc. Today is going to be a lot of like questions just getting answered, making sure you guys have everything you need. Okay, nice. Fun to see everything kind of trickle through. We got people in college interning. A lot of people in school, which is great. We have someone's a business analyst looking to pivot. Awesome. So yeah, feel free to ask any questions. If you have a question, you can raise your hand and we'll start to build the line. But we can also go through just a couple of things. So um, happy to talk about resume best practices. Happy to talk about case interviews, behavioral interviews, big tech versus startups. I've worked in both. Happy to talk about day in the life, networking, other types of like career pathways, whether that's PM to MBA or getting an MBA in order to get into PM. Happy to talk about the famous my favorite product question, and maybe while we're waiting just for kind of questions to trickle in, I'll just tell you a little bit about my story and background. So interned at Uber, as I mentioned, didn't even know what product management was when I was in college. It was unfortunate that I found out about it so late. So I knew I didn't have a great shot at getting into a top APM program coming out of school, but I thought I could compete for more businessy roles. So I joined LinkedIn in the strategy and analytics program, which is a biz ops and sales ops rotational program. So I did a sales ops rotation, did a biz ops rotation, and the biz ops rotation was supporting a product team. And then I convinced the head of product of our business to let me stay on as a product manager for one of my rotations. And then I used that to basically pivot into product and did all of my product case interview prep and everything during that rotation, and sort of solidified myself as the go-to product person in this like particular domain. So by the time I was actually trying to make a case for me to pivot into product, I had a champion in the head of product and I had like engineers that I was already working with. So it made the transition a lot easier. I still had to go through the whole interview process, but it made it a lot better. And then once you can get in as a product manager, it feels like there's always, case interviews and other things, but it felt like landing my next role, there was a lot more respect and it felt like it was more of a conversation we were having about product as opposed to like testing my product casing abilities. So anyways, we can jump into some questions now. I'm getting some through the chat already. So would love to hear your insights about, and if there's certain questions that come through in the chat that you want to like upvote, you can leave a little emoji reaction on those, and that helps me know like, okay, or maybe it's hard, or just like reply. I don't know if there's emoji reactions here. But if you want to like +1 anything, you can do that. It's helpful for me to know. So all right, would love to hear insights about building domain knowledge while preparing for PM in job search. Yeah, so I think it depends a lot on the type of product role you're going after. I think there's some of you that are probably interested in specific industries. For example, like if you're coming from the let's take the mortgage industry background, you're kind of in mortgage industry, you're in fintech, whatever it is, your chances of landing a PM role are so much higher in that industry than they are if you're trying to pivot to like any sort of FANG company. And I saw this even at LinkedIn. I worked on the Sales Navigator product, and we actually had a few sales reps that pivoted into product because they knew the domain that they were going to be product managers for. They still need to understand how products were built. But I think that's where like actually developing kind of that domain expertise can matter if you have a specific world you're trying to recruit for. Outside of that, though, I actually think it's more important to just start getting product experience, learn how to build stuff. And that could be formal, like product management internships or experience, and it could also be informal. I had a friend of mine who was at LinkedIn in sales, wanted to pivot to product, had no shot of getting in the door just through the actual interview process. So he volunteered. He basically said, "Hey, can I be your assistant product manager and just give me projects to help you?" And I gave him a bunch of projects. It was all for free. It was just helpful for me. And he leveraged that into pivoting laterally. So I think any type of side hustle that can really help. Um, all right, we're gonna keep going here. Um, can you share your resume best practices, suggestions to crack the pre-interview process? Yeah. Definitely. So I think if you were to break down like the product recruiting process, you have the pre-interview or just getting the interview process. And then you have like once you got the interview, how do you crush it? I'd be curious in the chat if you guys could share like what are you most concerned about pre-interview or post-interview? Uh, because I think a lot of people are just like, I don't even think I'm going to get interviews. And then others are like, hey, once I get them, I think I can get in the door, but I'm just having a hard time preparing. Um, okay. So it looks like we got a mix. Great. We'll spend some time on both today. So pre-interview process, I think, this is where, so resume is a big part of it. We'll talk about resume. So of course, this is like showing impact, building a track record of being a builder, making sure that everything on your resume speaks to the product role, especially if you don't have product management experience. I also think like getting the word product management or product manager on your resume, if you don't have that already and want to pivot into product, should be top of mind. And that could literally be you start a company and you're the product manager, you're the head of product, or it could be you work with a friend on a side hustle and you're the product manager for their company. It could be doing a free internship for a couple months. Like, do anything you can to get that word on your resume, because it helps so much. If you're trying to pivot into product management and pivot industries, and they don't know anything about you, unless you're coming from a really prestigious firm, like maybe if you're coming from McKinsey or something that's clear that you've hit a really high talent bar. But outside of that, if you don't have recognizable companies on your resume, you got to get the actual role experience. So I think it's either, like for example, I was at Uber. Uber is a recognizable company, but it was not product management, and I had a hard time getting into product management even at LinkedIn. Um, However, once I started to get some like product management experience while I was at LinkedIn, they liked the fact that I had come from Uber and they liked the fact that I had done the product role. So I think get that on your resume. That can also be a track record of just building things. So if you're a software engineer, or if you're a designer, or if you're just a business person, doing anything you possibly can to just build stuff. I remember when I interviewed at LinkedIn, I brought a baseball that I had built in college. It was like a little side business, corebaseball.com. It's actually still puttering along with some of my siblings. Um, but that baseball I gave to all of my interviewers, and it was like this physical manifestation to them that I was a builder. So actually, the CEO at LinkedIn, who used to be the head of product, Ryan Roslansky, he still has his baseball that I gave him on his desk, and that I think went a really long way. So come up with little things like that to show people that you're a builder, even if you don't have that kind of stuff on your resume. Okay, we're gonna keep going because we're getting a lot of questions. Um, for a current non-PM employee, do you recommend trying to transition into a PM role internally before applying to outside PM roles? So this is a great question, Glenn. I think this depends a lot on the culture of the company. A lot of companies will tell you, "Hey, we support internal laterals," but they don't, or they make it really hard. And so this is where like you may be doing some side product work where you're at now, and then leveraging that into getting in the door somewhere else is usually the best approach. For example, one of the most gifted product people I knew at LinkedIn was in BizOps, and his process to try to become a product manager was so long and convoluted that he went and got a job at another top tech company, and he like shot up the ranks in their product org. And it was so disappointing that he couldn't just get in through LinkedIn, but that's just the reality of a lot of companies. They make it hard. And I think product in particular is a role that a lot of people want, and so oftentimes it's best to just get some experience and then leverage that into a role somewhere else. Um, okay. Do you need an MBA to pivot into PM if you're 5+ years out of undergrad? Currently in EdTech as a customer success manager. Yeah, Crystal, that's a great question. I do think it depends a lot on your role. So a CSM role in EdTech. So first of all, I think trying to get a product role in EdTech is obviously going to be a little bit easier than a PM role somewhere else. I think it depends a little bit on the proximity of your existing role to product. So if you're in business operations, or you're in corp dev, or you're in a role that kind of interfaces with product or software engineering, it tends to be a lot easier. I think so. You're kind of on the other end of the spectrum, which is kind of in the sales, customer management role. Sometimes you still interact with product, but it feels a little bit further away. I think that it would be, I don't think you need an MBA. I think it can help to pivot. And a lot of people do that. They go get an MBA in order to pivot. Depends a lot on the program you're going to go to. So not every MBA program is going to pump people into product roles. So it depends a little bit there. I personally, if I were you, would try to get some of that side PM experience at your current company and see if you can just get that product, like a little bit of product experience, so that you can then transition into an ed tech product management role. and just spending time with the product managers at your company. And if you feel the biggest thing for pivoting into product is you have to find a champion. It's so hard to get that opportunity if you don't have someone internally that can vouch for you and really stick their neck out for you. Even I feel like my situation, which I was basically acting as a product manager in a rotation. I needed the head of product to like stick her neck out and say, "Hey, here's one of the guys that we should hire. We're only going to hire a few product people." That made a huge difference. All right, we're gonna keep keep cruising. We got a lot of questions. Um, all right. I'm currently in the third year of a bachelor's degree in computer science, working on a startup. How could I possibly bring into product management straight out of college? Is that a possibility? Yes, it's always a possibility. I think computer science backgrounds are backgrounds that they like, right? Technical backgrounds can be helpful. A lot of you are business. I was a business background. I had some tech. I was an information since I had some technical background, but sort of in the business school. So it's obviously possible to come from a business background. Really, product management, you need to spike in some way. So you might spike technically, you might spike from a design perspective, you might spike in product sense, but you have to show them that you do spike. I think building a startup is a great way to do that. um, I would say though, so you're in the third year of your program. That means you're kind of you're in the process, or at least you're in the ballpark of being able to recruit for product internships. And I would absolutely try to get product internships during school, so that you can be competitive for the APM programs. But APM programs are kind of a known thing. It's definitely a possibility. What are some non-traditional ways to get into product management as a new grad, like other roles that align with PM that you could then transition into? Um, Yeah, this is a great question. So, I think yeah, roles that are adjacent to product are always best, right? The closer you are to actually building something, so software engineering, product design, maybe biz ops, supporting a product team, or some other operations role. Those are usually the best roles to actually get you exposure. The opposite side of the spectrum is more like sales, marketing, and customer side. Those you can definitely do it. Those just tend to be a little bit further away, and so it's harder to build those strong relationships that end up getting you a champion. Um, and then the other thing I would say is like, if you're having a hard time getting the Coinbase or Facebook or Meta or the Google or these other top LinkedIn, whatever, these other like FANG tech companies, their APM programs are obviously super competitive, but you can go join a startup in a product role and it's a little bit easier to get in the door. And maybe you do a couple internships there. Um, we had someone on our team that interned at Leland as a product manager. He had interned at another startup as a product manager, and then he landed at Atlassian. And I don't think he would have landed at Atlassian if he had not done some of that product experience. So that's a big part of it. Okay, and I'll just also leave this up too. So make sure you. I know we have some people trickling in now. Make sure you uh, enter this. You can get free admission to the PM boot camp. We're gonna go through like so much of this that we're talking about. It's kind of impossible to cover everything in an AMA. I'll keep doing these periodically, and we have other coaches that are doing them. So you're now in the system. We'll invite you to future events, but the the boot camp is here's kind of just a quick overview of what it's going to look like. We're going to do 8 sessions, each taught by different coaches that specialize in each of these things. So the first is sort of that pre-interview prep world, getting the interview, how to learn where to apply, when to apply, how to get referrals, how to craft a winning resume, some of those things. And these are not events that you just listen in on, more kind of like this one. They're actually like events where you're going to be making progress. You're actually going to be working on your resume in the session. You're going to be getting some feedback in the session. And then you'll go through some of these interview prep, like interview type uh, event or interview type courses. So you're going to have like the behavioral interview, how to tell your story. The take home assignments one is going to be more about like, when you get a product take home assignment with drills and practices, how do you actually like come back with something that's going to get you that next interview? This is very common. Most of the APM programs will give you a take home assignment. Then you'll actually talk about that take home assignment in your interview. Product design interview. So how do you have kind of a basic understanding of design and how you would, articulate a product that you're going to build? The favorite product question, as I mentioned, this could be favorite physical product, um, favorite digital product, favorite app. It could be a bunch of different things. A lot of different product managers like to ask a different variation of that to make you think on your feet. But this will be a good session for helping you kind of come up with those products, pick one that makes sense. Like, for example, this is, we'll go through a couple of these random tips, but like if you're in the product, your favorite product question, do not pick like AirPods or pick like Spotify or something that the interview knows very well and likely has opinions on. Pick something that's a little bit more niche. For example, I picked a product because my wife was pregnant. I picked a product that like tracked the baby's growth and development because I expected them to not have downloaded that product. And if they had, like, probably not have a ton of experience with it. And so I could come with really interesting ideas, explain things to them, really empathize with the user. And it sort of felt like it was my playing field, not their playing field. If you pick AirPods and you come with like some recommendations or tips, they might disagree with you. And it just opens up the door for, I guess, a harder interview. So yeah, you have behavioral interview, technical and analytical interviews, how to prepare at least the base for those of you that aren't software engineers. And then you have execution, product strategy interviews. And then the last session will be a little bit more like in the weeds, helping you to kind of work through either interview prep or work through how to get the interview. So it's going to be an awesome session. If you were to buy all this stuff ad hoc, it would be like $3,000, but we're doing a code that expires tonight, and you got that code if you put your name and email into that form that I had, where you can get it for $6.99. So make sure you do that. I'll leave this up while I go back to answering some of these questions. Okay, so how would you build a product portfolio on your own as a beginner without much PM work experience? How do you do it in a systematic, sustaining way? Yeah, this is a good question, Simon. And I think that it comes back to like, how do you establish yourself as a builder, as someone that gets into a situation and just starts to build? And I think it's like, it could be through a startup. It could be through, other extracurricular activities. It could be through every time you do an internship, you're trying to get some sort of like product exposure. But I think it's just a pattern of like building things wherever you can. And I think a lot of people are like, well, what do I build? What do I do? And the answer is like, it doesn't matter. Like, build anything. Just like show that you can build something. And again, like, building doesn't have to mean like you're writing code. It can be that, and that's sometimes more helpful. But my brother, for example, is recruiting for product management roles, and he's built like an SEO AI product. He's not like the most technical person, but he's like helping people generate articles for SEO in this like specific way. And that's just like a product that he can talk about. So I think it's more just a matter of you being passionate about a problem, coming up with a solution and building an MVP for it that you can talk about, that makes you interesting. You don't just want to be someone that like is just, I'm interested in product. Like, you're not going to get in the door because you're interested in product. You're going to get in the door because you're interesting to the person that's interviewing you. Currently interviewing to become an APM. Is there a framework you use to answer product design, creating case questions? Yeah. That's a good question, Jasmine. So there are a number of frameworks out there. And in our bootcamp, we'll actually go through a couple of those frameworks to help. I think I could pull up some of the frameworks that I use, and in fact, I'll do that right now, because I think it's worth kind of talking through. But at a high level, to me, you have to be careful not to over framework this. It's kind of a balance. Like, learn the frameworks, practice the frameworks, and this is where, like, if you are not doing lots of product case prep, you're going to really struggle in the interview, and it'll be apparent. So you need to learn the frameworks, not so that you can be a robotic framework user in your interview. That would be very bad. But so that you have the tools that you can apply to each situation and each product case that you get. So for me, one of the things that always helped me in any of the frameworks that I would apply to different situations is always start with the user. Always build empathy with the user. So, for example, if one of the classic questions is design an alarm clock for a blind person. Okay, great. So before I jump in to designing that alarm clock for this user, I'm going to sit here and empathize deeply with what this user needs. So who is this user? This is someone that cannot see. So because of that, we need to be really thoughtful about the mechanism for how they set the alarm clock, how they turn off the alarm clock. Okay, that's really important. Maybe voice could be a way that we do that, right? Probably would be helpful. Or maybe there's like specific buttons or whatever it is, but I think voice could be really interesting. So you take a second to empathize with all the specific pain points that this person likely experiences before before you start solutioning. That's super important. Now, of course, you can go, spend some time building empathy, spend some time going deep on, uh, what they actually need. And then you can start to brainstorm potential solutions. Then you start to prioritize. And this is where you get some, for example, they may say, all right, you're interviewing at LinkedIn, design a product for LinkedIn. What would you do to improve LinkedIn? That's a huge question, right? Because LinkedIn is a consumer platform. LinkedIn has like 7 businesses. They have LinkedIn Premium, they have LinkedIn Learning, they have LinkedIn Sales Solutions, they have Talent Solutions, they have Marketing Solutions. They have all these products, right? They have Jobs, they have Recruiter, they have all these things. So for me to just jump in and say, all right, I'm just going to pick, I would design a TikTok-like video feed for LinkedIn. That is jumping straight to a solution and doesn't help them understand how you got there, right? So you could say, all right, so as a user of LinkedIn, I'm going to take a second to empathize with, with users of LinkedIn and kind of list out some of the potential pain points that they're experiencing. And you may say, hey, I'm going to take the consumer perspective, or I'm going to take the recruiter perspective, or I'm going to take the marketer perspective. And it's probably helpful for you to outline those different personas. So you could say, all right, I'm designing a product for LinkedIn. Before I jump in, I think it's important for us to determine which user we actually want to build for. In my experience, it seems like LinkedIn is building for maybe 5 separate persona, well, like millions of different personas, but maybe 5 general buckets. It's someone is wanting to market on LinkedIn, someone is wanting to hire on LinkedIn, someone is wanting to get a job on LinkedIn. So, you can go through it, right? Here are all the people, here are all the personas. From there, you can say, great. I think the biggest opportunity, or maybe the one I'd like to spend the most time on, is X. It's the person that is trying to market on LinkedIn. What are some of the challenges that marketers on LinkedIn face? And then you go through and you list your pain points. And so I think I'm just trying to, I don't want to over belabor this point, but make sure you're actually spending time to kind of systematically prioritize the user that you're going to focus on, especially if it's a big question like design a product for LinkedIn. If it's design an alarm clock for a blind person that's already focused, then you can just jump right into kind of pain points. But make sure you kind of level set that before you go into any of the solutioning, before you go into any of the building, before you go into any of the risks or things you might want to explore further. And there's also like all sorts of other frameworks that we'll talk about more in the bootcamp, but even things like the what would you improve about X types of questions. Those are super important to kind of make sure you're systematically going through and kind of figuring out what are the pain points that someone might. There's just a million things you could do to improve a certain product, but kind of going through all those pain points and making sure that you can articulate why a specific pain point is most important. Because product management is so much about prioritization. And so it's actually a lot more about prioritization than it is about ideation. And that's really important for you to understand, because if you just jump into good ideas, everyone has good ideas. We all know that there's good ideas. What they want to test is, can this person use their judgment to make a right call on what should be built, and then how to build it and how to build the MVP of it and test it. So that there's a lot of judgment that goes into product management. And I think a lot of people think, well, I'm good at coming up with product ideas. It's like, great. You're going to be inundated with product ideas from all of your customers, from all your partners, from all your engineers, designers, et cetera. How do you prioritize? All right. We're going to keep going because I know we got a lot of questions. Wanted to know how to break into product management as an economics student with real estate work background with project management certifications. Yeah, so let's talk about certifications. Certifications are, I think, a lot less important than a lot of people think. And so not to like knock anyone's certifications. I know they do take time and money and effort. I think the biggest thing is like, what are the skills you sort of left with? What is the network you left with? What is the industry knowledge you've developed? And how have you shown and demonstrated that you are a builder? If you take nothing else from what I'm telling you, it's go figure out how to be a builder. And then as you figure out how to be a builder, figure out how to transmit that into a resume that gets you interviews. And then in your interviews, communicate to them how you think about building. Like it's just this persona of being a builder that you really want. And this is especially true for people coming from like an economics background or a business background or a background that isn't necessarily a builder background. If you're coming from an engineering background, they probably know this person knows how to build stuff and maybe even is pretty good at building stuff. Maybe if you're coming from that background, you have to figure out, how do I show them that I'm not just an engineer and that I can get out of the weeds and I can look at the 30,000 foot view and I can learn how to prioritize. And there's all sorts of things that you may want to prioritize coming from that background. Um, so, anyways, and it depends a lot on this unique situation, but that's just some general advice. Any advice for networking effectively and also getting referrals? Yeah, Shayla, this is an awesome question. Um, so the first thing I'd say is do everything you possibly can to get referrals. This is a big deal. Many of you have probably spent the hours just applying cold to so many jobs, and I think you'd probably be better off spending time building relationships at 20 companies. And you can do the whole like pick the top companies that are the best in the world and figure out how to network into those, but then pick some other companies that are maybe local to you or maybe give you an advantage, have some sort of advantage in. So you're kind of spreading your chips out. If you're only like, hey, I'm going for Google, Meta, whatever, that's great. Those are just going to be the most competitive, and so you need to be thoughtful about it. In terms of actually networking, you've got to start with why someone would respond to you. I've sent thousands, probably tens of thousands of LinkedIn DMs at this point for different reasons, and I did a ton when I was younger recruiting for product roles. And I basically realized that if they did not go to my alma mater college, like their response rate was going to be, less than 5%. But if I could make some sort of tie either to my school, and maybe I just wasn't being creative enough, but it was school or it was something that they cared about. Um, People are inherently, self-interested. If I couldn't come up with something that would give them a reason to respond to me, it was going to be super hard. But so let's talk about, I guess, that briefly. And I even have a funny story about this with Leland. I was trying to get Leland had just raised $4 million for our seed round a couple years ago, and I was trying to get some press coverage. And I reached out to this guy from Forbes, who was a great guy, and I feel like we really, I thought that we would hit it off, but it was a cold outreach. I saw that he was from Detroit, and I saw that he liked the Pistons, which is the basketball team. I'm from Utah and I lived in the Bay Area. I did not care about the Pistons at all. So I wrote my little pitch, and at the very end, I just put "P.S. Go Pistons." That's all I said. I don't even know anything about the Pistons. And the first he responds to me immediately and says like, "You got me with your savvy. Go Pistons. I'd love to chat." It was like something so small. It took 2 minutes for me to see that he was interested in that, but it gave him a reason to respond to me. So figuring out why would this person respond to you is so important for getting on the phone. Once you actually get on the phone, then it's about how do you actually like be personable? How do you build a relationship? And how do you stay in touch with them? Right. So for me, what that looked like was I got on a call with people. I would, try to build a relationship. By the end of our call, I would say, hey, I'm actually planning to come out to the Bay Area in a couple of months. I would love to take you to lunch or get coffee with you. Is that something you'd be open to? Most of the time, if you make it easy for them, they're like, sure, yeah, keep me posted. Like you're not asking them to do it immediately. And then I followed up. I took a trip out to the Bay Area and I went to lunch or met up with people for coffee, probably 25 people in about 3 days. And I was just bouncing around all the different tech companies. So by the time that I was applying to product jobs or any jobs for that matter, I had relationships with these people. I had talked to them on the phone. I had met with them in person, and they knew that I was serious and that I was going to be a competitive candidate. So doing anything you can to kind of separate yourself from the competition is super helpful. What technical skills are needed to best prepare for interviews with non-technical background? Yeah, so this is a good question. I mean, I think I would say people have different opinions on this and companies have different opinions on this. So certain companies really care deeply about a strong technical background. Other companies actually care a lot less about it. I think the most important thing, generally speaking, is you need to know how software is built. You need to know what like a front end engineer does versus a back end engineer. You need to know how different technologies relate to each other. And I think being able to make prioritization decisions because you understand generally how hard something's going to be to build is super important. And I think understanding like kind of the fundamentals of how software is built will give you will give you enough to be able to do that effectively. All right. Oh, we have so many questions. I wish I could get to all of these. We're gonna keep going. Um, all right. If you're in a round of APM interviews, does it matter when you interview within the interview time frame? Does interviewing at the beginning of the interviewing time period increase your chances of passing to the next round, or does it not matter? Uh, Usually it does. It does. And so for that reason, apply as quickly as you can. This is different than a lot of companies or even schools that we've been trained on is like they have a deadline, like make sure you apply before this date. Don't do that. Apply immediately. As soon as you possibly can, apply, which is also why you need to have done your networking and gotten your referral as early as you can, teed up and ready to go. So as soon as that thing opens, you're reaching out to your contact and saying, hey, I want to apply to this role. They're like, great, let me send you the referral link. Often there's a link you need to apply through that's not their job application. Sometimes it's just the job application. They go in and kind of vouch for you, but make sure you're doing everything you can to get that interview. All right. How do you get volunteer projects to build from 0 to 1, and what are the best practices to highlight it? Yeah, so I think if you reach out to people that you have relationships with and just say, hey, I'd love to help you build product. I'd love to volunteer for a couple weeks. I mean, I think it starts with your network. It starts with the people you currently work with. And then if you can't get that, just do it yourself. Go build something on your own. If you're hiring manager, what type of skills and experience you're looking for in a resume, also in a candidate during the interview process? Yeah, this depends a lot on the type of role. I think generally though, what people are looking for as a product manager is this person a leader? Can this person make good decisions? Can this person help us prioritize and kind of move things forward? The best product managers are not people that are just sitting there writing product specs. They're people that are moving the organization forward through building the right thing and building it quickly. And so I think that comes, that can shine through in a bunch of different ways, but it could be through your communication ability. That matters a lot. Could be through your ability to kind of inspire even without formal authority, because you're going to be working with people that don't report to you, getting them to build things for you that they don't necessarily need to. So I think good communication, good leadership, good prioritization, and then just a general good sense for product intuition, engineering, and how long something's going to take, and design. And if it sounds like a lot of things, it is. It's a complicated interview process because good product managers have a number of different skill sets. Do you have any thoughts about the career implications about the location of your office? Yeah, Kevin. Do you want to come off, Kevin, and elaborate a little bit?
Yeah, this is actually more of like a personal question. For me, like I'm actually working for Walmart as a PM right now, and there's the implication that I could be working for them in Arkansas, compared to New York City where I'm at right now. So that's a
Yeah.
huge change. I've been always in the East Coast, West Coast. So now I'm thinking about if I do get the return, I have to think about what are the implications professionally. I think socially that's like our own problem, thinking about how I want to deal with that situation. But professionally, I want to think about if I want to pivot out of that area,
Yeah.
what should be thinking about?
Yeah, that's a good question. It does matter, I think, because your network matters and the people you meet matter. So I think that that doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be a bad experience. And getting in the door as in a product role, especially at a great company like Walmart, could be great. I think one of the things that you could think about is what's the possibility to potentially transfer to the Bay Area or New York, and kind of being clear on that. And then also like shopping it around. Like, all right, I got a return offer from Walmart, and I'm going to go and talk to a bunch of other companies that are in New York or in somewhere I want to be, and because I think it does matter. I think especially as you're starting your career, it matters a lot. Good question. How would startup experience count? Yes. Sorry, we're gonna go fast because I want to get to as many of these questions as we can. What are some experience examples we get besides defining requirements? I'm not really sure what that means. I'm going to keep going. Can you share an example resume for someone trying to transition from software engineering to a product manager role? Yeah, good question, Mary. I don't have one like on hand right now. We do have a ton of resumes and other resources in Leland Plus, and we'll have a lot of examples of these in the boot camp. I think maybe just a couple things to think about from a software engineering to product manager role, and the specific things you want to call out on your resume is helping them understand that you aren't just someone thinking like an engineer. So what does that mean? Well, when you're listing out what you did as an engineer, when you're showing impact, that impact might be in, so let's say you built a feature that reduced latency by, X amount of time or whatever. Why does the CEO of the business care about that feature? And that's usually probably why the product manager cares about that feature. Well, maybe because it led to X amount in revenue, or it led to some other like user growth or something that like is a little bit higher level than the specific engineering thing that you did that drove the impact. So I think what I would say generally is like software engineering is a great background to have for pivoting into product, but you just need to make sure that it's clear that you think like a product person, not just like an engineer. How can one go about identifying and communicating their spike? Yeah, Nandini, this is a great question. And frankly, I think if you were to ask the average product manager, even at the best companies, they probably would have a hard time articulating where they spike. And so this is I think it takes time to figure out what you're great at. It takes time to build confidence to be great at something. So sometimes it's easy because you know maybe have a data background or a software engineering background or a design background or something. And sometimes it's not as easy. Like for me, I don't feel like it was, you know, I had some technical experience, some design experience, but I kind of just felt like I was good at, you know, having product sense and being able to prioritize. And so it was hard for me to kind of communicate that. So for me, what I did was just show evidence that I was, you know, a builder at heart and that kind of had that well-rounded experience. And then I think I prepared super well for the interviews. And I think you need to do the same thing where when you're doing product cases, you need to come with opinions. You need to be willing to kind of defend those opinions. And I think a lot of people, when they're interviewing folks, they want to see that product manager is unafraid of having strong opinions, because you're going to be making decisions. I thought this was interesting when I would go to, when I, you know, at LinkedIn, a lot of the engineers I worked with wanted to kind of outsource all of their decision making to me, which I was fine with. But like some of them were like, "Hey, I want you to write down that you made this decision because if it's wrong, like I don't want to get in trouble." I'm like, "Great, like that's kind of your job as a product manager. Like I'm gonna prioritize this feature. It needs to be built this way, and then here's the reasons why." And so in the interview process, you're kind of I think communicating that well is super helpful. Yeah, so sorry, about 3 to 5 more minutes, and then we're going to announce the winner. So if you haven't gone to bit.ly/100 p.m., make sure you go do that. You're going to get a bunch of free resources. You'll get the $500 discount. If you win, you'll get a bunch of, you know, free access to the boot camp. It'll be great. So make sure you do that. Nick's going to shoot me a note. Nick's on this call. He's going to send me a note who won. What are the best ways to get a referral if you're unproven and untested? Yeah, David, I think it's just building relationships and showing how much you care. Never underestimate the power of just caring. And this caring does not mean desperation. Don't like send this, you know, essay of an email telling someone why you're so desperate to work there. Do not communicate desperation, but showing that you care, going above and beyond matters a lot. And I think that you can kind of do that to build the relationship is what's going to make up for things that you are kind of deficient in. Is there a list of companies that we know have some PM internship programs? We do have a list of, you can search Leland APM programs. We track a bunch of those. We also will send those out as we hear about them. You can follow me on LinkedIn. If you haven't found me on LinkedIn, I post about a lot of internship opportunities, and Leland will post them as well on LinkedIn. So that's probably where I'd say it sort of like comes up quickly. So you got to be tracking it. But yeah, we'll try to send those out. Yeah. So would you recommend any online courses? I mean, I would say I recommend the boot camp. We've basically custom built that boot camp. And then I would recommend just getting as much internship experience as you possibly can. Should I apply for the associate product manager program? Or I have 4 years of experience as a technical product owner and 3 years as a business analyst. Yeah, I think so. Some companies, they will tell you like, hey, if you're pivoting into product, you should apply. Like Meta says, like apply for our rotational product manager program, even if you're an experienced hire. But most companies, I think I would just apply to the product manager positions. That being said, like I hear you. I think it's just hard. It's going to be hard to get a product manager role without having some product management experience on your resume. And so that first product management experience could just be a free internship, volunteer position, like building something on your own. Just do something to get that word on your resume, and don't make that big jump be a full-time paid job as a product manager, because it is a grind to get that first job. Yeah, if you did this, yeah, I'm glad you signed up, Manaka. Thanks for doing that. If you win the boot camp and you've already signed up, then we'll just give you a refund. we also do scholarships as well. So if the cost is too high, feel free to apply for a scholarship. We'll give out a couple of those as well. Okay, I'm gonna just read these last questions and kind of say a final word. It sounds like I should do more. Would this be helpful if I did another one of these? Give me a thumbs up if it would be helpful. I can do more of these later. Okay, great. We'll schedule another one. I'll let you know. And by the way, if you can leave a review, you can leave a review on this event right after the session. I would really appreciate those reviews. Helps me. Okay. Yeah. So I'm gonna kind of wrap up this last one, trying to touch on a few of these questions. Yeah, and I'll definitely just call it a product management internship. I think that's okay. I would make it consistent on your LinkedIn and your resume. I think that feels a little weird to have that. They may have questions, but okay. So I think that the last question we'll just touch on is like, I think that the general feeling of product recruiting is that it's just hard to get in the door, right? I know many of you are probably thinking like, this has just been a grind. I sent in my resume, never hear back. Seems like they want 5 years of experience. Like, how am I going to like get this job? So first thing I would say is like, don't lose hope. There are, of course, this is a competitive job. There are lots of people that want to become PMs. They are very high paying jobs. You get a lot of power and responsibility, often more responsibility than you probably should get for being so young in our careers. That being said, there are specific like if you are just applying cold everywhere and never hearing back, like you gotta make a change. So that change could look like a bunch of different things. It could be, all right, I just need to go get some volunteer product experience. I need to go build something on the side. I need to go volunteer with a friend who can let me get some product experience. Maybe I build a side hustle and I call myself the head of product. It may be I need to go get an MBA. It may be it's most likely not I need to go get a course or certification. The course, I think, and like the boot camp for us is less about the certification and much more about giving you the skills. So I think the skills that you're developing as an interviewee and as someone that needs to go and figure out how to land that can be super valuable. But like going and doing a 6-month course that's going to give you a project management certification and not give you any hope of getting a job, those typically I wouldn't say are the best. It's much better to get like the training you're getting should be tailored to like actually getting the job. But you got to mix it up. So this is also where obviously we have tons of coaches that can help. They can help you kind of work through. I'm actually one of my clients right now. We've been working on it. He wants to transition into product management. And so we've been working on a side hustle product that he can build, that he can kind of point to when he starts to interview for product management jobs. So this is common. A lot of people work on that with their coach, especially if they're kind of, they're lacking any ideas. So try to get some experience. Once you think you're even close to getting interviews, start prepping like hard, because it is competitive. There are going to be lots of people interviewing for that job, and you need to be prepared. You need to know how to do product cases. You need to know how to answer the favorite product. You need to understand frameworks. You need to understand technical basics. You need to understand how to do the analytical questions. Like you need to understand a lot of things. And so don't underestimate how important that is. And then the last thing I think I just want to communicate to you guys is that you can do this. It is competitive. It is hard, but it's also something that can be incredibly rewarding. I felt super frustrated. I came from a non-target school. I didn't feel like I had a shot. My dad was a dentist. Like I didn't have any like fancy hookups or connections, but I networked my way in. I got some side hustle experience. I built a little startup and just tried to be a builder in everything I could. And it eventually worked out. So, do the best you can, try to get into product adjacent roles, try to get some other experience, and then prep as hard as you can once you get that interview. And with that, we're going to wrap it up. The giveaway winner is Kushagra M. Kushagra. So I probably said your name wrong, Kushagra, but we will reach out to you. Yeah, congrats. We will send you the details, get you registered. And for the rest of you, I know a lot of you have already signed up. We hope to see you there. I'll do more of these in the future, but again, this is like probably 10% of what one session in the bootcamp will be. So definitely want to make sure you take advantage of that. And it's a great way for you to get a bunch of exposure to a lot of different perspectives. We're going to have PMs from all sorts of different companies, Meta. We're going to have PMs from LinkedIn. We're going to have PMs from other startups. It's going to be great. So hope to see you there. And again, if you don't mind leaving me a review, I'd really appreciate it. I'm always happy to chat with you about coaching or, if you need help with anything getting started, I'm happy to chat with you. But wishing you all the best. And thanks for being on Leland. Hopefully we can be helpful to you in your journey. Take care.